All right, welcome back. We're almost through this. We just need to get our JavaScript working here. We have our expandable lists working the way we want, looking the way we want them to, but our toggle button doesn't actually do anything yet, and our sublists are visible by default, which will be the first thing we take care of here. Right over here in our index.html, we're going to set a style attribute here. And we're just going to set the display property to none. And if we save that, you can see one of them in the first nested list disappeared. I'm just going to copy this down. So there goes the first list, and we'll do it on the second list also, the second nested list. So these will be displayed none when the page loads, regardless as to whether the CSS is loaded yet or anything. These will be display none. Now we just need to get our toggle button to work to toggle the content state back and forth. So since there's two buttons here, we actually need to loop over those. So we'll do a for loop, and we'll let I equal 1, and we'll say, since there's two of them, as long as I is less than 3, we'll increment I. Now we need to select each of our toggle buttons. So we'll assign a variable. We'll say toggle button, and we'll say document dot. We can use get element by ID in this case because of the way I named the IDs. I'll show you here. We'll do li-toggle dash, and then we'll concatenate on the value of I. So in this case, in this for loop, the value will be 1 for 1 and then 2. So this will target li-toggle-1 as well as li-toggle-2. And if you remember over here in our markup, each button has an ID of li-toggle1 and the second one li-toggle2. And if you were going to create more and more of these, you could just continue that convention right along infinitely, really. But that will be our toggle button. And then we're going to add an event listeners to both those buttons. So we'll say toggle button dot add event listener. And we're going to listen for a click. And then we're going to run a function called open close, which I'm going to write right now. All right, here we go. So we've targeted the toggle button itself, but we haven't targeted the content section that each one is associated with. So we'll define that now. We'll say let toggle content equal document dot get elements by, we'll get them by class name, because if you remember our list items, we have a corresponding data ID on each toggle button. So we have toggle button, like in this case it's toggle-2, that corresponds to the class name of its associated content area. So this toggle2 button is associated with this toggle-2 classes, as this data ID toggle1 is associated with this class toggle-1. These naming conventions tie these elements to each other. So we're going to do document.get elements by class name, and instead of looping over them, we can just say this dot dataset.id. All right, and that right there, that's targeting the data-id value of, so it's saying this item, which is this toggle button, the data-id value, which is toggle-2, get the loop through the class names for the items that have this as a class name. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. There are multiple of them, so we have to loop over the sublist items also. So we're going to do another for loop, and we're going to say we'll use k this time. As long as it's as long as it's less than toggle content dot length, that'll just be however many of them there are, it will loop over them, all of them. We'll increment. And we're just going to do an if statement. Basically, the long and short of it is that if it's visible, we want to hide it, and if it's hidden, we want to make it visible. So we're going to use an if statement, and we're just going to say toggle content k if the style dot display is equal to none, then we want to reverse it. So we'll say toggle content k dot style dot display, and we'll assign it to list dash item, which is a display property for list items. Otherwise, or else if, and this would just be the opposite scenario, toggle content k dot style dot display is equal to list dash item, and I'm sure you can guess it from here, toggle content k dot style dot display, we'll assign that to none. All right, so let's save that and see. Hopefully we got that right. So there you go. We click in our content's expandable and collapsible, and each one is associated with its own content section. The one thing that's not happening is that this doesn't switch to less, so we actually have to add one more little line in here, and we're just going to change the inner HTML of the button itself depending on the conditions. So we'll say toggle button. See, in the case of this, we're setting it to list dash item, which makes it visible. So we'll say toggle button dot inner HTML. When it's visible, we want to set that to indicate that we can close it. So we'll say less. And in the case of it not being visible, we will set the inner HTML to indicate that there's more to view. So we'll just say more. So we'll save that. And there you go. It switches back and forth more or less. And there you go. There's your nested lists. And you can add these and duplicate this. And, you know, I was using this for a project that had a lot more content in here, and it really helped collapse it down. If you expand both of these are only two items that we're collapsing, and this goes from being quite a bit of content all the way down to, you know, this is very digestible. And if there's no need to see more detail on a certain line item, you know, then it makes things much more manageable for the user, much more digestible, and just a better user experience overall. So have at it. Feel free to modify it. Use it however you like. Thanks for watching.